Hello, continuing with my watch. This is the bezel which is going to sit above the dial. Soldered a piece of wire onto the back of this hole that I cut in 1mm silver sheet. I'm just cutting the corners off. Actually trying to get the weight down, because soldering with this little handheld torch, fluxing it up here, I've managed to tack it on there with some solder, but it's not a very good job. You can't get the heat into it. This solder here is hard solder. I'm sticking it on the gap between the wire and the sheet, and I'm going to have a go at soldering it on there again. So that's the solder on the join. We'll light up this is a butane handheld torch. Can't see the flame very well on the video, but basically I heat this up for ages, and the solder goes tacky but doesn't really run because there's not enough heat in the silver. But thankfully I'm not going to have to use it again.
Bits and pieces. First of which, oxygen cylinder and gas cylinder amongst all this mess in my garage, and so I need to test that these joins are not leaking. And this is my new torch. Made little brackets that I can hook it on the bench. There's a magnetic one that you can buy, but I'm frightened of knocking that off and setting fire to the garage. And so we got oxygen and gas. Hopefully this should give me a decent flame and I should be able to solder well with it. So that's what I'm going to do now.
Unfortunately my video recorder ran out of battery, otherwise you would have just seen me solder this. The new torch works extremely well, has a very hot flame, and all the solder ran all the way around the piece of wire, so that's good. It's attached all the way around, and I'm just cleaning it up with the file at the moment. I'm still waiting for my slow cooker to come, which I'm going to fill with safety pickle, and then I'll be able to solder and just drop it in safety pickle, and that will take the detritus off the surface. That's my dial, and that's how that's going to sit on top of there. I'm going to see if I can thin it down a little bit. I'm sure I don't need 2mm to accommodate the hands, so all this buffing won't do any harm, and I'm just cleaning it up a little bit more with emery paper too. Although I am going to have to solder on this again, so I don't really know why I'm bothering to get it all clean. Though it is easier to solder on a clean surface than a dirty one, but I don't really need to take out the file marks at this stage. But it's nice when you're working on something which is all clean and shiny. So, and obviously it's my own time I'm wasting. I'm not on the clock, so now I'm just experimenting with this dentist drill to find out what size drill I need to put the wire through. There's going to be wire between the dial. It's going to go through the bezel and around the dial to hold the dial in place. As you see there, the drill just jammed on the silver as it went through. There we go, we've got it out there. That's what happened with a bigger drill on a piece of copper the other week and cut my finger open. Anyway, that hole there is a little bit on the big side, so I'm going to find a smaller drill. Had a lot of problems with this dentist drill. It's been blowing the fuse, and I opened up the foot pedal and there was a screw loose which was touching the case. So I thought perhaps that was it, and so I tightened that screw up. So there was no connection between the case and the foot pedal. Put a new fuse in and ran the drill for about 20 seconds before it blew the fuse again. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with the dentist drill. Dentist drill is such a useful tool. It's possible I can drill these things out using a pin vise and just my fingers, but it's going to take a lot longer to do it that way than using the proper tool. And here I'm just using my gauge to find out whether that's going to be suitable, and that does look suitable. So I'll put that drill bit in the drill, and then this is the piece which I cut out of the material which holds the movement. There we go, just drill up that hole there and test it again with the wire. Yep, it's a lot more snug. That's what we're after. So that's the drill I'm going to use. And I did make a bit of a pig's ear of this. These two wires go through this bezel and they go through the dial. I need this piece, the triangular piece, I want to face out across the 9 o'clock direction. It's going to help lock it into the case so that it doesn't rattle around, and that's the dial there. I've actually written with a Sharpie the numbers on, so that the S is for the stem, because that's the side the stem comes out of, 6, 9, 12, and the bezel in my hand needs to go the right way on that, but I've drilled it the wrong way a couple of times. It's not the end of the world, because I'm going to actually trim the dial down. Underneath, I've made a little dip there so I can get the tweezers in and pull the movement out, and on the opposite side of the case I put a little tab of silver which holds the movement in nicely. So now that we've got that, I'm going to solder these posts in, and you'll see this torch, how it operates. I've already fluxed this, I think, and put the silver solder on the joins. And the first thing to do is just to feather the material with the end of the flame to try and get some heat in it. The flux occasionally fizzes a bit and chucks the solder off, so I don't apply the heat straight away. And then the end of the blue piece inside the flame is the hottest place and gets the heat in the material very, very quickly, much better than the other one. And where the wire is attached to the sheet, I want to run a little bit more solder around the inside just to hide the join. So I'm going to apply that, and I do apply that and solder it. And then we're back to how it looks with the dial attached with two pieces of wire going through it to the bezel above. Now I need to drill 2 holes in the other side, because 2 pieces of wire isn't enough, 4 pieces is somewhat better. One of the advantages of using wire to attach it is that I'll be able to, by manipulating the wires, move the dial around in relation to the bezel. Only absolute fractions, but we are talking only fractions. I think the hole is roughly central. I did test it out with one of the hands just to see that it cleared the bezel all the way around. It was quite close, but it should be able to run around without touching anything. So I've run those holes through the dial and the bezel. I'm going to have to solder in 2 more pieces of wire. Bit fiddly getting it apart. And now I'm going to make the holes in the base plate using the holes I've just drilled in the dial as a little guide. And the reason I'm doing that is because the wire is going to need to go around the dial, and I'm going to have to cut out a little section of that back plate to facilitate the wire. And I'm just using this to mark out where those holes have got to be. So it's a little bit like a block of Swiss cheese at the moment. There's a lot of holes everywhere. I'm not too fussed. That back plate is going to be soldered to 1/2 mm sheet so that it's actually enclosed at the back. So these holes won't go all the way through. And I've been having trouble with the pendant drill. It keeps blowing the fuse. And this is a little burr, and I put my foot on the pedal and nothing happens. So the drill has blown a fuse again. Okay, so I'm going to use the old-fashioned method, which is a fret saw, and I'm just this is much like how you cut a hole out to facilitate a diamond going in something. You angle your saw and you widen the top while keeping the hole at the bottom fairly small, and you can use the saw a bit like a file to shape the hole into any shape you want, typically round or square. And so I'm just cutting these little pieces out so that the ends of the wire don't cause the section which holds the movement to not sit flat. The wire can go into these little indentations. So it doesn't take too long to do. I can always make these bigger, so I'm not too worried about making them particularly large. If there's not enough clearance for the wire, I'll just widen them out a little bit more. And here I'm just soldering these posts in the other side, and again running a little bit more solder around the inside of the join between the wire and the sheet. I really do want that join to be well hidden, and then I'm going to buff it. It's the only piece of this watch that's going to be visible from the outside, is the inside edge of the sheet and the wire. Very easy to melt what you're working on with a torch like this, but it's quite satisfying to use it and everything work as you wish it to. It's one of the magic parts of being a jeweler. And there we go, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.